Welcome to Linguistically Aware, the podcast about all things linguistics. You are listening to CJSW 90.9 FM, broadcasting out of Calgary, Alberta, at the University of Calgary campus radio station, located on Treaty 7 land. I would like to take this opportunity to acknowledge the traditional territories of the people of the Treaty 7 region in southern Alberta, which includes the Blackfoot Confederacy, comprising the Siksika, Piikani, and Kainai First Nations, the Tsuut'ina First Nation, and the Stoney Nakoda, including the Chiniki, Bearspaw, and Goodstoney First Nations. The City of Calgary is also home to Métis Nation of Alberta, Districts 5 and 6. My name is Brooklyn Shepard, and I'm a PhD student in linguistics at the University of Calgary. In this conversation-based podcast, I sit down with linguists, or language experts, to talk about the ways language and linguistics interacts with our daily lives. In this episode, I sit down with Summer Abdalla, a recent graduate of the MA program in linguistics here at U of C. I asked Summer to come in to help break down some of her research from her master's thesis for the rest of us to understand. Her thesis, titled Perception and Production of a Quantity-Sensitive Stress System in Adults and Children, the Case of Levantine Arabic in Canada, looked at how both kids and adults produce and perceive word stress in Levantine Arabic. She decided to study Levantine Arabic specifically as its stress system is a very interesting case, but I'll let Summer tell you the rest. So could you start by introducing yourself a little bit about your background and what you did at the University of Calgary?
For sure, yeah. So my name is Summer, and I'm a recent graduate of the master's program here at the U Calgary in linguistics. I also received my bachelor's in linguistics here at U Calgary. So, yeah, I am a well-seasoned linguist from U Calgary. I got into linguistics straight out of high school because I was going to pursue speech-language pathology. And then I started, as I was going through my courses, I found that, first language acquisition was something that was really interesting, and got into the field of research through some volunteer work, and then stuck around long enough to be accepted into the master's program and get to do my own cool research on first language acquisition.
Okay, yeah. So I asked you to come here today because you said it, you recently finished your master's degree in linguistics here at the University of Calgary. And I know your research focused on these stress systems in Arabic and Levantine Arabic. So I have a couple questions first to kind of break this down for our audience. So first, what is the difference between Arabic and Levantine Arabic or other varieties of Arabic? And then second of all, can you tell us a little bit more about what you mean by stress in this case? Because I know in linguistics, stress, when we talk about stress, it doesn't necessarily mean the same kind of stress that most students are familiar with.
Yeah, for sure. It did cause me a lot of stress, though.
That's fair.
So I did study the stress systems in Arabic, specifically Levantine Arabic, which is like a family of dialects under the big Arabic language umbrella. It's made up of 4 different dialects, which include like Syrian, Lebanese, Palestinian, and Jordanian Arabic. And I chose to study that group because I'm a native Lebanese Arabic speaker. So exploring that would have been right in my wheelhouse. So that's why we kind of looked in that. And that's kind of the primary difference between Arabic and Levantine Arabic. So just more specific. And specifically what we mean about stress is we're talking about the prosodic cue of stress, which is basically the prominence of a word. So what's really fun about Arabic is it has a unique system of stress. So in English, stress is not fixed on a word. So we can have examples of this in the words of record and record. Those words differ solely based on where I place the prominence, right, between the noun version and the verb version. In languages like French, the stress is fixed in terms of the word. So we have words like téléphone, ordinateur is always going to be at the end of that word. In Arabic, it's really fun because where you put the stress in your word is based on the structure of the word. So we have words like our favorite one, habibi, which just means my love. The stress is going to be on that second syllable there based on how the word is structured, versus a word like برتقال or orange. The stress is going to be on the final syllable because that's how the system works. So the really neat thing here is Arabic is neither like English nor French, but it does share both qualities. It's got an unfixed system like English does, but it's also got a predictable kind of way of finding where the stress is going to be, like French, but it's in its unique way.
That's really cool, and I actually did not know any of that, so that's super interesting to me. Yeah. I have a couple follow-up questions for you, if you don't mind.
I hope that made sense.
I think it did, but I don't know. I'm also a linguist, so. Yeah. But no, I do think that made sense. I think that's really cool. I'm wondering, so these are things that you knew before you did your research on Arabic?
No.
Or is this what your research found out? Will we get into this? Okay. Okay, spoiler. Okay,
yeah,
sorry. And so in terms of stress, like you talked about Levantine Arabic as a specific dialect or sub-dialect. Yeah, because there's multiple dialects within that dialect, correct?
Exactly.
So I'm wondering, did you focus on, like you said, you focused on that specific dialect because it's familiar to you? Was there something that made you, like, is there evidence that this stress system is different across dialects?
Yes. So the really cool thing here is Arabic generally has a similar stress system, but within the dialects, there has been research that found differences. So for example, with Egyptian Arabic, there's like this really interesting rule or placement where you can kind of shift the stress placement in certain syllable structures, which would just not fly with like the Levantine dialect. So that was pretty interesting to find out as, a native Arabic speaker, because we don't really pay attention to that stuff as like normal speakers. No one's really listening to where we're placing stress. But as we know, as linguists, that stuff makes a huge impact on the language.
Yeah, no, and that's true. I mean, even in English, in your example of record versus record, I would say, like, yes, of course, linguists are aware that the only difference is stress placement, but I don't know if every English speaker is like, yes, I'm going to put stress here to make it a noun. Like, these are kind of things, at least for me, when I started in linguistics, was like, whoa, like a realization where I was like, this is cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
Okay, sweet. So yeah, now you kind of alluded to some of the things that you found in your research, but now I'm going to ask you a little bit more specifically, sort of what in your thesis for your master's, what your specific research questions were, what questions were you trying to answer, and why did you think this was interesting and important, obviously to linguists, but also to the general public, or like in terms of our understanding of language more generally, not just your specific field.
100%, yeah. So as we mentioned in the beginning, I think, my thesis focused on the perception, the production, and the acquisition of this quantity-sensitive stress system. Basically, what I was looking to find out in my research was originally, when do children learn this really complicated system of stress when they're learning their native language of Arabic? And as we were exploring that, we realized that this is still kind of a gray field. We're not really sure if adult speakers of Arabic know the system themselves. So obviously they know the system, but are they able to, like, where do they stand in terms of stress perception? Mm-hmm. So this is actually a funny story. This stemmed from me not being able to find out where the stress was when I was designing my stimuli. So we started, doing my background research on what do we know already as linguists about Levantine Arabic stress systems. What do we know about kids learning their stress system? And to no one's surprise, we found nothing specifically about Levantine Arabic. But as we were exploring more, we found that there is a kind of well-explored notion of stress perception or stress deafness, which the field is trying to move away from that word, but just for clarity. And it's been explored in a series of languages, including French, where it's concluded used with air quotes, that, for example, speakers of French are stress insensitive because they don't need to be aware of where that stress is in their language because it's always fixed, versus English speakers who are more stress sensitive because you do have to kind of be a little bit conscious to hear that difference in stress to understand what the word is. So that led us to think, well, what about Arabic? It's kind of somewhere in the middle. Yeah, we've got a non-fixed stress system, but it's also predictable. Does that mean that Arabic speakers are sensitive or they're not sensitive? And that's what led us to kind of the second half of my study, which is testing the perceptual abilities of adult speakers of Levantine Arabic and their production skills. And then after we learned if Arabic adult speakers can do it, then we moved on to identifying the acquisition pattern of this quantity-sensitive stress system.
Can you just say a little bit more about what you mean by acquisition of this stress?
Yeah, so in order to speak the language, you have to be able to say the words properly. So what we wanted to explore is, do children kind of learn this? So Arabic, I should actually elaborate on what a quantity-sensitive system is. So Arabic is a quantity-sensitive stress system, which means basically it's weight-based. It's based on the syllable structure. I'm trying to say it in a way that's not so jargony, so hopefully that makes sense. But basically, it all matters on understanding the syllable structure of the word and how much weight that syllable has. That's how it's assigned stress.
In this next part, Summer walks us through a bit more about what she means by the weight of a syllable and talks a little bit about moras. So I just want to pause for a second and talk a bit more about what a mora is. So very generally speaking, moras are used as a measure for the weight of a syllable, which we'll get into a bit more here. And when we talk about weight, we're really talking about the phonetic material in a syllable. Summer breaks it down into potentially how many sounds there are in a syllable. And we'll see some examples of that shortly. But essentially, the most important piece of information we need for this is that the more moras a syllable has, the heavier it is. And they typically have between 1 and 3 moras. So let's get back into this quantity-sensitive stress system in Levantine Arabic.
So Arabic is rule-based in that sense. Like, we've got rules. If you've got 2 moras on this syllable, that's grabbing the stress. Otherwise, assign it to whichever one has the most weight to it. So what I mean by acquisition is we wanted to learn at what point do children become sensitive to these rules, in a sense, and when do they start accounting for the moras, the syllable structure, and do they use that information to kind of map their language?
Yeah, so I have one question about this weight that you're talking about of syllable structures.
Yeah.
So when you're talking about the weight of a syllable, like, is this different by language, or like what does that mean? I mean, I know we're not talking about like physical weight, right?
Yeah.
Of, like, it's not heavier. This is more of a linguistic concept.
Yes.
But is there anything like, do you have examples from English or something, or an example even just from Arabic where you can point to specific sounds? Like, what makes something heavier or lighter?
Yeah. So in phonology, which is offered here at the University of Calgary, you can take Ling 303 to learn more, if it's still called Ling 303.
It is.
We have these concepts. You learn about syllable structures. And the most syllable structures are made up of consonants and vowels, or C's and V's. And basically, depending on which language you're speaking or which language you're studying, their syllable structures can be different. It's really exciting. There's like a bazillion different ways to build a syllable across languages. But in Arabic, some of our most common syllable structures are just consonant, vowel, CV. We can have CVC or CVCC. Point being, the more sounds you have in a certain syllable, the more weight it's going to hold. So in a word like maktabha or her office, based on the rules and how the system is set up, we can hear that that second syllable there, tab, has a CVC, and because of the rules, it gets assigned the stress. Versus the earlier example I used, Portugal or orange, you can hear that that last syllable is kind of the biggest one there. It's got a CVVC structure, so that's how that gets assigned the weight there.
Ah, okay. Yes, that does make sense.
Yes.
That's really cool. That sounds very complicated and difficult to learn. So it's interesting that you looked into how children are learning this.
Yeah.
You're listening to Linguistically Aware, broadcasting on CJSW 90.9 FM on Treaty 7 land. Listen to this episode or any other episode of Linguistically Aware in full at cjsw.com or Apple Podcasts. Just search Linguistically Aware. If you'd like to learn more about linguistics at the University of Calgary, be sure to visit our website, calgarylinguistics.ca. Okay, yeah. So now I'm just wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about how you went about answering these questions. So these are all really cool questions, and they seem like really interesting things. But I'm wondering, like, how does one actually go about doing this? Like, what kind of experiments did you do? Who did you get to do this? I think this is really cool. But yeah, I'm really interested to hear more about how you did it and what you found.
For sure, yeah. So I love research. This experiment was kind of the best thing that I think I ever had the pleasure of doing. So I did my research under Dr. Angeliki Athanasopoulou, who is an amazing, amazing phonologist and a child language acquisition researcher. So together we put together 2 experiments with a kind of sub-experiment for adults. So what we did is basically we planned out a perception and a production experiment. So perception just kind of means listening, and then production means speaking. So we put together these 2 experiments for both adults and children who were native speakers of a Levantine Arabic dialect. So that means that their first language was either Syrian, Lebanese, Palestinian, or Jordanian Arabic. And basically what we did is we presented them with some stimuli that had, let's start with the perception study. So for the perception study, we had presented them with 12 words, real and non-real words. And basically what I did as a native Arabic speaker was recorded these words with either the correct stress based on the syllable structure of the word, or the incorrect stress of the syllable structure of the word. And that was insane to do. Super, super hard. But basically what we did then is we asked a group of adults and a group of children to basically listen to the word and then deem it correct by their stress system or incorrect. And basically how we did that is I just told them to listen. If it sounds right, tell the character on the screen she said it right. If it's not right, tell the character that she said it wrong. That made up the perception portion of our study. And then for the production portion, which was kind of also intertwined with that study, was if the word was produced correctly or incorrectly, we had asked the participant to basically say the word back to the character on the screen, so that way the character could learn the correct way of saying the word. So like, for example, we had words like Portugal, which were said incorrectly, which I'm not going to try to do here because I'll butcher it. But basically, if they heard it correctly, they would say, yep, that's correct. And we'd get them to repeat it back just so the character could learn the correct way to say it. And if they heard it incorrectly, they would repeat it the correct way to say it. So that way the character could learn the correct way of saying it. We did that with both real words and non-real or nonce words. The nonce words really took the participants out there for a spin. What we did for the nonce words was come up with these nonsensical words that fit in the syllable structure of the Arabic system. So, for example, we had like a CV, CV, CVC word where stress would be placed on the first syllable according to the rule system. And I recorded that either with the correct stress or the incorrect stress. So an example of this that I will try to attempt is turakub is a word that we made up, which should technically be the correct way of saying it. And then I recorded 2 other instances of me saying it with stress on syllable 2 or syllable 3, which is incorrect based on the rules. So the participants had to listen to those nonsense words and say if it sounded Arabic enough, and if they deemed it didn't sound like it was a correct word in Arabic, they would just say it's wrong to the character on the screen, and then they would have to produce it back the way that they think it should be in Arabic. Total roller coaster ride. The Arabic speakers did not like the nonce words. Of course, children were a little more forgiving with that because they're still learning their language. So they're like, yeah, cool, this could totally be an Arabic word. Yes. So we quickly realized that maybe that task was a little bit too difficult for our participants, which led to a redesign and also our experiment 2. For experiment 2, what we did is we presented our participants with all 3 instances of a recording. So, for example, they would hear the word Portugal with stress on syllable 1, syllable 2, and syllable 3. And then they had to pick which one was produced correctly based on the Arabic pronunciation. So that one fared a little bit better with participants, and we got some pretty cool results out of that one. And we did that both with adults and with children. Let me back up a little and talk about the stimuli now. So for our stimuli, what we did is we created 12 trisyllabic nonce words, and that just means we came up with fake words that were made up of 3 syllables, so 3 claps long. And based on the different structures that we had, we manipulated the stress to appear on each one of those syllables. So if we had a structure that deemed syllable 1 stress, we took that word, we recorded it with syllable 1, syllable 2, and syllable 3 stress. And we did that for all our words, our fake words and our real words. And that's how we came up with our study.
That's really cool. That is a lot.
That's a lot.
That's a lot. Like, it just, I don't know, it just makes me think about like how complicated these things are. Designing an actual linguistic study, like it's fun and it's cool to study language, but wow, yeah, you're right. You never know what people are going to do, and you never know, especially when you're dealing with nonsense words, like you said, like how are they going to be perceive this? And so you said you found some really cool results. Do you mind sharing some? Like, are these results that are,
yeah,
like
absolutely.
You're able to share them?
100%.
Because that would be wicked.
Yeah, and this is going to be really fun when you think back to how I made the stimuli. So the research question that we were looking for with the adults is basically, are they sensitive to stress based on kind of this quantity-sensitive system? And our answer is no, we're pretty stress insensitive as Arabic speakers. So you can imagine me trying to record all the stimuli as a stress insensitive speaker, trying to figure out if stress is on syllable 1, 2, or 3. Whereas my supervisor, being a native Greek speaker, is very stress perceptual, or very sensitive to stress perception. So that was a lot of fun recording our stimuli.
So did she call you out when you messed up?
Oh, 100%. I was recording stimuli for a very long time, trying to make sure that we get it right on like the specific syllable that we wanted. But basically what we found in terms of our results is that adult speakers of Levantine Arabic are a little bit stress insensitive. They're not very good at detecting where the stress is or where it should be. However, when it comes to their production, they are spot on the nose. when they were producing our nonsense words, they were almost always accurate in producing the correct stress according to the structure, which is insane.
That's really cool. So you're seeing that they're behaving in a way that is like that is adhering to the stress system, but they just are not perceiving it themselves, even though they're producing it. That's really interesting. That really makes me think about like this connection between, which I know is not the topic of our interview, but this connection between perception and production in language, like, which is something maybe I'll do another episode on that, on like the differences of, you know, like we use language all the time as, you know, human beings to talk to each other and to listen to each other. But it's really interesting to think about like what parts of our brain and what parts of like what is in there in terms of how we think about how we speak versus how we think about how other people speak and how we perceive other people speaking. Like that's really cool.
Super cool. And that's why we study linguistics. Super fun. Yeah. And it's even crazier when you think about, you know, the children learning their language. Like there are so many aspects they're trying to like listen and learn and categorize and, you know, factor in all these cues that they're getting. And then you throw in like a complicated system of stress, like, whoa. And they come out by age of like, I think 3, they were pretty solid on the rules of their stress system of Arabic.
Wow. Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, you see things like that too in like I don't know, like languages just tend to have these rules, right? And we're not usually aware of them. And you see that too in English, and I could go on a whole tangent about phonology and how, like, you know, these things, these sort of aha moments you have when you take your first linguistics class. But we'll get into that another time because I could go on forever. I'm going to ask you just one last question.
Of course.
So I know we kind of talked a little bit about like sort of your motivation for this, but I'm wondering like how you got interested in this research project. Like I know you mentioned that you're a native speaker of Levantine Arabic, or a variety of it at least. And so I'm just wondering, like more specifically though, what was it that inspired you to ask these specific research questions? Like, do you have any personal stories that sort of led to this, where you were like, this stress system is really weird, minus like not including just like general taking classes and stuff? Was there something?
Okay, so what inspired me to get into this research project was really child language acquisition. It boggles my mind how kids come into this world with no language, and then, in just a short period of time, they have all these curiosities and they're able to use language to express that to us adults. So that's kind of what got me into the field of research. And then I met Dr. Athanasopoulos when I was working as a research assistant in the Department of Psychology. And I was really interested in the work that she was doing. She focuses on all of that stress stuff, production, perception. It was super cool. So when I decided to apply to the master's program, I obviously knew I wanted to study under her because of her experience with child language acquisition and experimental research. So when we got together, kind of like bouncing back and forth ideas off of each other, she told me about her previous work with stress and just her familiarity with this really interesting system of Arabic. So, we dug in, trying to figure out like, what are the gaps between, the stress system of Arabic and child language acquisition? And it turns out there was a big one. So that's how I got into my research. And then, digging more into the field, we found that there were a lot of gaps that we could fill. So we've got a whole bunch of data, a lot of fun findings, and this awesome research project.
That's really cool. And it sounds like there's probably a lot more work to do for maybe not you, no pressure, but like there's a lot more work to be done in this field, which I think is really cool. And, hopefully someone will be inspired to be like, that actually sounds really interesting. I'm going to look into
Arab
that.
Linguists.
Yeah, for real.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, that was my last question for you. I want to thank you so much for coming in today. I thought this was really, really cool. I feel like even as a linguist myself, I think I learned a lot from this. And I'm really, really interested in this research, and I'm excited to see kind of where it goes and how the field sort of takes it forward beyond this.
Yeah.
So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to get to talk about this, and Yeah, check out if you are interested in more of this research. We have the Developmental Psycholinguistics Lab right here at the University of Calgary. Like, there's so much cool research going on in linguistics, and it's just 5 floors away in Craigie Hall.
Just 5 floors.
Just
oh,
5
there's
floors.
elevators.
We have psychology students who come in and kind of volunteer. It's all based on like, just if you share the love of language, come through.
Yeah, totally.
Let's learn how we do it, because this is crazy.
Yeah, it is crazy. I know.
Love it. Thank you so much, Brooklyn. This is so awesome.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Linguistically Aware. We hope you enjoyed our deep dive into the fascinating world of linguistics. If you'd like to learn more about linguistics, please visit our website, calgarylinguistics.ca. Until next time, keep exploring the beauty of language.